How's it going, everyone? It is TheStarkz here, and welcome to yet again another PlayStation 5 video. Today we got a nice reveal a couple hours ago regarding some different details surrounding the next generation console, in which Sony thankfully gives some very interesting details too. So I'm going to read an article by The Guardian published by TheStarkz regarding PlayStation 5, and without further ado, let's get started. So he says that Sony has announced the first details of their next PlayStation console, but it is yet to have a name as confirmed, as well as the launch. It will not be launching this year. In an interview with Wired magazine in the United States, system architect Mark Cerny, who has instrumental in the design of the PlayStation 4, revealed that the machine will feature an 8-core CPU based on the 3rd generation of AMD's Ryzen processors, and a custom graphics processor based on the forthcoming AMD Navy family, which will be capable of real-time ray tracking, an effect that simulates the path of light through a scene, allowing for incredible realistic and complex reflections, refractions, and shadows. The effect is common in CGI movies, but real-time ray tracing is only just appearing in modern computer graphics card. Now, this set of information is really interesting. I like how, it's not too much information there or confusing. I suppose what I mean is how I appreciate the information that we receive, as it does say a lot about what the PlayStation 5 will be able to do. Now, I also like how they talk about the complexities of physics, as the lighting will have a simulation that appears to mock very realistic reflections and refractions, as well as shadows, to make your games look even more brighter, which I'm so excited for. So the article goes on to state that the next generation PlayStation is also set to include a solid-state drive, also known as SSD, replacing the hard disk drive, HDD, usually found in game consoles, which Sony claims will lead to faster game downloads, faster graphics rendering, and shorter loading times within games. Now, obviously, this is one of the biggest news that that I found in the PlayStation article, as well as this one, or technically the PlayStation one, because that's where it was announced. The fact that they're using solid-state drives instead of hard disk drives is actually really impressive. Now, I'm not really familiar with the differences, because I haven't actually experienced the differences, but from what I've been told by friends and coworkers alike, is that solid-state drives allow essentially machines, computers and things like that, operating systems, to load games, as mentioned in the article in which I just read, and downloads to be extremely quicker. And there was actually a demo in the official PlayStation article that suggested that the difference between the loading screen for Spider-Man is Sony had loaded in with the regular hard disk drive, and it took a whopping 15 seconds to load in. Meanwhile, it actually took less than a second with the solid state drive. So that just shows you the complexity and how amazing the solid state drive is as in comparison to hard disk drives. Sony is also promising a custom AMD sound chip to provide a 3D audio, and says that the new machine will support virtual reality at first via the current PlayStation VR headset, but later possibly via a new next-gen headset. Support for 8K televisions is also very likely, which is interesting, because we're still in the era of the rise of 4K TVs. I can tell you straight up, none of my houses have 4K TVs, and we have like 4 TVs in our house. So the fact that we don't even have that, and now they're introducing support for 8K TVs, is just absolutely insane. Anyhow, the article also states that while Google and Apple have announced cloud-based gaming subscription services, and Microsoft has its own Project X cloud streaming service, it seems Sony is committed to physical game sales. The next generation PlayStation will have games on discs. It also will be able to do backwards compatibility with PlayStation 4 titles, though there were no extensive details regarding how many games will be supported and how they will be supported. Now, this is obviously great news for PlayStation 4 titles. I want to be able to play The Last of Us. Hopefully that's one of the games. I'm sure it will be. And in terms of physical games, I know a lot of people appreciate more digital games. I don't understand why, because technically you don't own it. I'd rather be able to physically buy a game because I love discs. I actually own the game and I can do whatever I want with it. Meanwhile, digital, you don't technically physically own the game, which therefore means you don't really own it. It's not constructive. It's not constructive possession. It is constructive possession, as it would be if it were physical. It would be simple. So I don't like that idea. I prefer being able to hold something and be able to do whatever I want with the disc. So that's why I prefer physical games, and I'm glad Sony has not made the decision to switch with their competitors. So the article also states that a select number of studios are already working on with developmental kits for the new console, though no titles or services details have yet been announced. For the first time, as we all know, Sony is not holding a press conference at this year's E3 event in Los Angeles, but may well hold its own press event later in the year, which my speculation is June, just to compete with E3 content and their competitors. Obviously, we know State of Play is is now a thing, so that is more of a Sony and PlayStation focused event. And so in order to compete with E3, I'm sure they're going to do it in June. The article also states that in an industry increasingly moving away from dedicated platforms filled with high-end hardware and supporting physical media and towards digital-only streaming and subscription models, the next generation PlayStation seems at this stage to be something of an anachronism, which is really good, because I'm glad they're not following their competitors. It just wouldn't make any sense for them to take this idea of digital and streaming. I don't think that's progressive. I prefer the traditionalized way of physical games, and I'm glad that they made that decision. However, Sony showed at the famous E3 of 2013, just after the Xbox One was announced, that and seemed to be concentrating on a complex digital-first model. It is highly in tune with its core audience of dedicated players. With 90 million PlayStation 4 units sold since the machine launched over 6 years ago, the old recipe of custom hardware, exclusive games, and backwards compatibility seems to have still its legs. Play on words there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the article and all the new stuff. I picked this article because it kind of summarized everything in the other article, the official PlayStation article, which was a way longer read. So I appreciate The Guardian and Keith for doing this. So obviously this is good news. I commented on some of the things that were announced. So like I said, the SSD, very, very useful feature for the PlayStation 4, and the fact that they were able to integrate that into their console is mind-blowing, and it's just revolutionary, really, because they imply that it was a very, and it still is, I don't think they've adapted or have developed the specific hardware and the design of the console. However, even if they didn't, this technical achievement is something which I think a lot of competitors like Xbox and Google and all these different companies will look into going back to this way of doing things and implement this idea, which is really, really interesting. And I also like the idea of the little lighting complexities that they added to allow real-time ray tracing. That's very interesting because it allows, again, for more crisps and more incredibly beautiful looking and realistic simulations of images, which will only make our games look well. And then of course the SSD will make it run quicker or load up quicker, and then of course you have better sounding, and then of course just more improvement on just the physical aspects of it, and making sure that it runs smoothly at 60 frames per second, maybe even more if that's possible. And so I'm so excited for PlayStation. I'm assuming PlayStation 5, hopefully they come up with a new title. I like the idea of a PlayStation R, to imply PlayStation Revolutionary, but that's just my opinion. But I think they'll stick with PlayStation 5 because it's the easiest, and so regardless of what they name it, I don't care. I think that these new things that they added to PlayStation 5 is going to be very interesting to see how it works out for them in the future. And again, let me know your comments and opinions in the comment section below. I'm down to have an engaging conversation. With that being said, of course, I'm leaving this article in the description below for you to watch or read on your own. And with that being said, I'll see you guys later. Take care. Peace.